Good morning and welcome to the Small Business Support Group. It is the 30th of June. Tuesday. And he said Thursday, wishing the week away. There we go. Who do we have in this morning? We have Grant is here with
how you doing, guys?
with a bit more behind him, and Andy is here as well.
Morning, all.
Morning. Excellent. So today it's just us three. So we're just having a chit chat about electric cars, because obviously we touched upon it yesterday in the last 5 or 10 minutes of the show, and I wanted to keep it going really, because I think there's lots to talk about with electric cars. So who's got an electric car here? Obviously it's Grant. So tell us what you've got first of all, Grant.
Okay. So I've got two electric cars. Got one fully electric, which is a Renault Zoe, which I talked about briefly yesterday on the show, and I've got a FEV Mitsubishi Outlander, which is it's a hybrid vehicle, so they call it a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So I think it'd be good just to kick things off in Maz style by giving you my sort of take on the whole scenario. Now, bearing in mind that my whole life I have been a fully fledged petrol head. So right from a boy, cars were my thing. Absolutely loved fast cars. I've been the proud owner now of 11 Porsches, all fully full petrol driven Porsches. I've had everything from a V8 Hemi Jeep, BMW CSL, all sorts of fast cars. I actually owned a supercar experience business for a few years where we had everything from McLarens, Ferraris, Lamborghinis. So, it doesn't really come much more of a petrol head than me. So I just wanted to get that one out of the way first and foremost. However, my journey of kind of getting to understand electric vehicles started a few years back when I first sort of got introduced to the notion that electric could be better than petrol or diesel, which was an absurd thing for me back in those days. In fact, back at the time, I had a Nissan GTR at the time, which is about as thirsty a vehicle as you will ever find. And I thought electric cars they got no chance of appealing to me. And then I had a go in one, and I was absolutely blown away by the way that the car actually drove. And the first one I drove was actually a Nissan Leaf, believe it or not. Now, a Nissan Leaf back then, this would have been about 2013, 2014, around about that sort of time, was a really basic electric car. But it's the way that the whole experience worked for me. The technology in it was fantastic, and I like my tech. The power delivery was instantaneous. There's no gear change. And it just struck me how much more efficient the whole thing was. So that really got my interest. Now, it wasn't a sports car in any way, shape or form. But I've always had, my one eye on being eco-friendly. So it's something that, I pay attention to. But for many years, it was not something that I could put my hand up and say that it was. Other than I've had loads of Porsches, and Porsches do stay on the road a long time, which is eco-friendly in itself, I guess. But let's face it, they're not economical in any way, shape, or form. I did dip my toe in the water with LPG, so I've had 3 LPG vehicles. That's liquid. Is it liquid petroleum gas? I think they call it. I'm not sure what the P stands for. I think it's liquid petroleum gas. And LPG is where you get a separate tank fitted to your car that runs on LPG, which is much cheaper than petrol to fuel, but is also much more environmentally friendly. So I had that fitted. What was the first car I had LPG fitted to? It was a big Jeep. I had a 4-litre straight 6 Jeep. I had a big tank fitted in the boot. You lose a little bit of performance, but the LPG does make it very environmentally friendly. Then I had another Jeep. I had a Hemi. It was a 5.7 litre V8, and that had LPG fitted to it. And again, a little bit more environmentally friendly, but it still did 12 miles to the gallon, so that was no good. And then I had a VW camper that ran on LPG as well that I took around Europe. But none of that is anywhere near as environmentally friendly as electric vehicles. And the thing that just completely blows me away with electric vehicles is they seem to tick every single box, except for if you want to go on a really long journey, as Andy will allude to, I'm sure, and as he spoke about yesterday. Now, the range is the big thing that people talk about, but before we get into that, let me just tell you about the other advantages. The power delivery in an electric vehicle is instantaneous. It's absolutely awesome. It doesn't matter which one you buy, and there's loads and loads of options now. There's no clutch, there's no judder, there's no sort of hesitation at all with an electric vehicle. The power is just straight there, which just makes for a very immediate and relaxed driving experience. Secondly, there's no gear change, and the majority of electric vehicles, meaning that you're going to get a very smooth drive. You've got less moving parts in an electric vehicle as well. An electric engine is a really simple, small thing, and it delivers loads more power than a big, noisy petrol vehicle, which is so overly complicated by comparison. It's unbelievable. And so servicing is a lot cheaper. They last a lot longer, so the maintenance on them is minimal. The moving parts is minimal, and they last much longer. There's loads of stuff that there's loads of counter arguments that I'll be happy to deal with that we can talk about after this. But I want to give you the advantages first and foremost. Obviously, you've got the issue of fuel. They're really cheap to run. So mine costs, I don't even notice it. My electricity bill went up a little bit when I first started using it. I plug it in at home, but it's massively cheaper to run. The tech inside most electric vehicles is awesome. You know, you get apps to turn them on and off, to do the warming up in the morning and getting everything defrosted if you're in the cold weather, or aircon if you're in the warm weather. All of the touchscreen interfaces and everything is usually way ahead of the petrol equivalent or diesel equivalent. And getting all that tech is a cool thing, you know. The car that I went in at the weekend, which was the Porsche Taycan, which was the electric vehicle, was just full of tech, absolutely awesome. Not very attainable for the average person, I realise that, but still an awesome thing. Now, the range is the one thing that people will go on about that is a problem. Now, the electric vehicle that we've got at home, that we've had since 2016, so we've had it 4 years now. I've had it 4 years next month, exactly. The range has now gone down to, you know, on a good day, about 60 miles range. So you plug it in and it's 60 miles, which is rubbish compared to most electric cars that you buy now are 150 to 200 to even 300 miles range. That means you plug them in, you fill them up, and you get, you know, if you go for a Tesla, it's 300 miles plus. Even if you go for like a Peugeot 208, you got over 200 miles range. And these are all affordable cars now, by the way. The equivalent car that we've got, the Zoe, will now give you well over 200 miles range if you buy a new one. But 4 years ago, when we bought ours, it said it was about 90 miles range, but, you know, real world, it's probably 60. You know, might get 80 out of it if I'm really, you know, being really, really generous. But the point is that my wife uses the car all the time. She commutes to Birmingham and back. We hardly ever need to go on journeys longer than that. When we do, we've got another car to do it in. It's such a rare thing for us as a family to need a car that does more than that. Despite the fact that I thought we might have trouble, it hardly ever comes up as an issue. And now that electric cars have got a much bigger range than the one that we've been using for the past 4 years, I can't see it hardly ever being an issue. I really can't. The charging infrastructure is something that Andy touched on yesterday that we will talk about, which is a problem if you have to do long journeys. But the point is, most people don't have to do long journeys, and because you charge up at home every night, you've always got a full tank. You get up every morning, you get a full tank, and the range issue is minimal. So I could go on for ages about the merits of electric cars. The future is coming. There's no avoiding it. We can talk about whether they are really environmentally friendly or not as well, which is a big debate that people come up against. But first and foremost, the main point I want to make is that electric cars are just better to drive. They're faster. They've got more tech in them. They've got less moving parts. They don't go wrong as often. They're cheaper to run. They're just better. And that's coming from somebody who is an absolute bona fide petrol head for most of his life.
Well, we've got questions coming in, which we'll go to in a second, and I know Andy's eager to jump on and talk about this as well. But from my perspective, obviously, I don't have an electric car. I'm looking for future. I think it's definitely the way to go. I agree with everything that Grant said, and all the stuff that's included. But there was a video that came out last year. A lot of people may have already seen this, but it was actually on the Grand Tour with Jeremy Clarkson. Now, he'd already, I'm going to say, slagged off Tesla when he was with Top Gear. And there's lots of stories and stuff floating around that they staged a lot of the stuff that was happening. Obviously, they do stage a lot of stuff. But they staged the Tesla breaking down and all that type of thing, and the batteries running out all the time. So this was, Musk and Clarkson had this thing going on for a few years. So last year, Clarkson was given the Tesla X to try it on the show. And as everybody does when they have a ludicrous model of a Tesla, they put it in a drag race. And I just wanted to put this on just in case people haven't seen it and just to show you the performance of one of Tesla's.
Right, before I do this, I'm going to engage what's called ludicrous mode. There we are. Hold on, I've got a choice. Really want to do this. No, I want my mommy. Yes, bring it on. There we are. And then, because I have the mental age of a 9-year-old, I'm going to use the warp speed graphic. And there it is. Right, good. I'm ready. That really is properly ludicrous. 100 miles an hour. 105, 110, 112, the Audi's coming. But not fast enough! That is astonishing. Small wonder this thing is fitted with my favourite mode of them all, celebration mode. There we are. All I have to do now is put it in park, get out and lock the doors. What's this?
Now that was up against. I just love that clip. That was up against an Audi R8 V10 with 600 brake horsepower, and that was a Tesla X with a ludicrous mode fitted as well. Now I fully understand no one drives them like that. I think when you do see a Tesla driver, he does seem to pull away from the lights quite quickly, doesn't he? Just to show what he can do. But it just shows what I think that what that shows is what technology can do, and when you put somebody with the brain of Elon Musk into making cars. Now, for years, friends of mine who work in the industry, who work at JLR and Ford as well, have always said the build quality of Teslas has always been terrible. And I think possibly in the early days it was, but I think now they're getting much better at it. And I think obviously everybody's stepping up with a Tesla, with electric cars. Ford has got the new Mustang SUV that's coming out, which is electric. So it's the future for electric is phenomenal. And I think, as Grant said yesterday, is it Jaguar that's got turned virtually all of its production lines to electric? Is that correct?
Yeah.
No, they've only got one production line.
No, they're converting the whole lot, Andy. They're converting everything to electric.
It's not done yet, though. They're still, because their export market is still enormous for diesel, Range Rovers. America, petrol, diesel, all that. It's a massive export market for Range Rover and Land Rovers and Jaguars as well in the States. Also, the Far East and Middle East is their big export markets.
So, Andy, what are you, let's go over to you now, because obviously you support the motor industry. As you've told us before, you were trained by Ford in sales when you were younger. Your son works in the motor trade as well. So it's all, it's vitally important that the motor trade in this country, even though the companies aren't owned British companies, but we still do a lot of production here of cars. So what's your take on all this, without getting political?
First of all, look, let me explain to you about what my views about low carbon. Low carbon is important. As I told you, I recycle like everybody else, right? And I'm conscious about, and I'm actually one of the biggest advocates for public transport. As you all know, I used to go everywhere on the train. But obviously, since the pandemic, that's obviously slightly changed. The fact of the matter is that you don't destroy an industry in pursuit of low carbon, right? The reason being is what a lot of people don't understand is, one, electric vehicles actually do produce emissions. I'm looking at online right now. The Toyota Prius produces between 94 and 109 grams per kilometre, right? My diesel X1, or not mine, my wife's diesel X1, produces 115 grams of emissions per kilometre. Now, that's not a lot of difference, is it? And what a lot of people don't understand, and one of the things, fundamental things, when the government announced changing over to electric, is they included the hybrid, which they weren't supposed to include. And this is because politicians, I'm sorry to mention them again today, don't know what they're talking about. For instance, to produce electricity, did you know that every power station in the UK and in most power stations in the world, they produce electricity by, guess what? Combustion engines. Very big ones, and also turbines. And that's how you produce electricity. Think about it. If you've got a portable generator, what is that? That's a combustion engine, right? And it makes electricity. You can't just make electricity without combustion happening somewhere, right? They do have other engines, admittedly, and they can actually start some engines and run them on electric once they've done the initial start of generating electricity as well. So there's lots of ways that, so this thing about the government, let's get rid of the combustion engine, is because they don't know the applications of the combustion engine. For instance, there is not an electric boat yet. And there are, I think, at the last count, at least 100,000 motorised pleasure craft in the UK at any one time. Maybe more than that. I could be. There
are electric boats, Andy. There are
electric boats. I know. I worked with an engineering company that developed an electric boat with Craig Fletcher. You know the guy. There are, but they're not widespread. It's not like there are no electric heavy goods vehicles because the battery technology is not there yet, right?
Tesla's built they're rolling it out now. They've had loads of orders for the what do they call it? The Tesla Semi.
Massive. The truck. It's Tesla. Yeah, the Tesla Semi.
It's not available in the UK. And it's not even necessarily ready in the US yet. It's obviously they're taking forward orders because of the battery technology. Yes, battery technology is improving. I was talking to an engineer yesterday who they've got a new technology where they're actually having battery banks rather than the charging points, because there aren't enough of them. They're going to have battery banks to charge cars. Okay. And those battery banks will be rechargeable batteries. And those batteries are actually being developed by Tesla as battery banks, and Tesla are doing that in the US, where they've got big battery farms. I don't know if you've heard about them.
Yeah, they're doing it in Australia. Australia, a massive adopter.
They're looking for a location in this country as well, aren't they? I think.
But again, we're quite some way off. So let's just move on to where we are today. Yes, and my son sells BMWs. I've driven the i3 many times. I went to Birmingham in an i3, came back, and we had range anxiety. I had to switch all the electrics off. So you talk about the technology, but it's no good if you've got no power. It's the same old story. If you've got no power, you've got nothing. If we have a power cut in our homes today, we've got nothing, right? We're not ready because we're so reliant on technology now and electricity. So the emissions are being produced to produce the electricity. Don't live. There's no such thing as zero carbon. It cannot happen, right? While the human being inhabits a country, you can't have zero carbon. Fact of life. While the cows, you can't have zero carbon. But did you know that the UK only puts out 1% of emissions of the global emissions? That is all we put out, right? The next top 15 countries, not counting the UK, emits over 70% of emissions. So what we've got a government that is pursuing a low carbon vanity project when we were already at 1%. Do you know what China's at on emissions? Do you know that?
No.
29%. That's their figure. So people suspect it's a lot more than that. So unless you have a collective in the world about these emissions with all the countries, there's going to be countries who come at an unfair advantage. Now, if we put that into the mix of our economy at the moment, which is heading for the biggest recession in the history of the world, right? And Brexit and low carbon, you're destroying your economy. We are now looking down a barrel at the recession at the moment that's coming up, where they're talking 3 to 4 million unemployed. Let's hope they're wrong. We don't know. You don't know, I don't know, and the government doesn't know. But the fact is, that's what they're talking about. So we have absolutely, over the last few years, hammered our largest industrial sector, which is automotive. Now, people say, oh, well, we're going to do low carbon. You're missing one point. In Germany, they're doing similar, but they're not going as far. But the difference is Germany is a domestically owned automotive industry. That means the German entrepreneurs or business people own most of the German motor industry. In the UK, due to government policies, we've allowed foreign entities to own all of our automotive industry. Therefore, as I said yesterday, Nissan can decide to relocate their factory to another factory or production to another factory, or as in the case of Honda is doing, they're closing the factory in Swindon, right? Now, what the government should be doing with that factory, as I said yesterday, in a Honda factory, is dedicating that to battery and electric technology. We're spending 14 billion there. Do you know how much you'll do to set that up? $1 billion, you'll have change for $1 billion, easily, and running costs for probably 5 years. It is one of the most modern factories in Europe, actually, the Swindon factory of Honda. That's the technology. So let's get sensible. You don't destroy an economy, right, or the largest industrial sector you've got in the UK for a single issue. Yes, we're going to have electric. It's going to be there. But the Prius is putting out 109 grams per kilometre. It's here in black and white. And my diesel BMW...
Where's that stat from, Andy?
Drivingelectric.com. Drivingelectric.com.
So, but what are the emissions attributed to? Is that because it's based on taking the electricity from a coal-based?
They also say that some of it obviously goes into the manufacturing, and they do also. I don't know what the measures are. Knock yourself out. You can do an hour on it. But my diesel BMW, which is very clean now, this is a brand new diesel 2020 model with AdBlue that basically turns all the NOx gases into clean vapor, right? Puts out 115. So guys, all this thing about yes, there are dirty diesels. I'm all for getting rid of the old diesel.
At no point, Andy, have me and Grant mentioned about saving the planet here. We've just talked about how good electric cars are.
Electric cars are better.
I'm not saying it's a replacement.
Oh, good on Grant's right. What he's saying, I'm not disagreeing with Grant. The reason I'm not mentioning about Grant because he's right. The i3 is a super fast car, and the new i3 is 181 mile range. Although BMW openly own up, it's more realistic to go for 160, right? So
it's one of the lower ranges. That is the i3 out of all of the cars.
But let's move on to the charging facilities. There are only at the moment currently 1,500 rapid chargers that will charge your car up to 80% in less than an hour. Okay, that's the stats at the moment, right? There's about 9,000 total electric chargers in the UK. And I was right what I said yesterday. M1 northbound, all the way from Northampton, all the way to Leeds and beyond hasn't got a charging facility on the northbound side of the M1. Tesla haven't. They have on the southbound at near Nottingham, right? But the fact of the matter is, why not? This is and it all comes down to joined up thinking. The government is the madness. I was right what I said yesterday. The grant was £5,000 for an electric car. In March this year, they reduced it to 3,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Right. Also, the reason we haven't got more public charging points, it's fallen upon to provide them? Local councils. Local councils have been in austerity for a decade. We've now got a global pandemic. Where's that going to be on the list? Very low on the list. Public charging.
Yeah, I think you're right what you're saying there, Andy. But as I said, that I wanted to talk about electric cars. I understand that you've taken you seem to feel that we're all against petrol and diesel and electric's going to take over and we're going to get rid of it. But we don't want that because there's still great petrol and diesel cars around and there will be for years to come. I'm just saying, you to have an electric car with all the gadgets and the gizmos on it, and it does all this and it does all that, and it self-drives. Well, it will eventually self-drive, and the range is getting better. I mean, what's the range of a Tesla 3, Grant? Do you know the new Tesla 3?
Yeah, you can get one that does over 300 miles range now.
They say over 300, but they say the realistic if you use it.
I'm just looking at one now because I just wanted to find out how much it was actually to lease. So that's a Tesla 3. And the long range, and I was really surprised at this. The Tesla 3 long range is £378 plus VAT to lease a month.
Yeah, you got to put about £6,000 down for that.
Yeah, there's 6 payments. That's you've got to put that. Oh no, it's more than that, isn't it?
Let me just finish what the point I want to make about
3,500.
Grant said. Grant said the key statement in what he said. The Zoe that you've got is great for around the town. The i3 is great for around the town. I've even considered getting one for Marion, but it was too expensive to buy, right? Much more expensive. There's no deals on them, right, from BMW on an i3, right, that I could get on the Diesel X1. Marion's my wife, by the way, for anybody who's watching this. But you said it, Grant, as long as you've got another car at the moment. That's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For most instances. Yeah.
But you have got another car that's a hybrid. I'm actually saying the government should not actually be thinking about getting rid of hybrids because they are very environmentally friendly as well.
So Darren just asked this question: what is the lifetime of the batteries and the cost of replacement, and what's the impact to the environment regarding battery waste disposal? Grant, can you answer that one?
Yeah, so first of all, battery technologies move forward massively now, and all Tesla batteries now are 1 million mile batteries. So they go for 1 million miles. 1 million mile batteries, yeah. So that they last forever. And also, like for example, the battery that's in my car, which is pretty old technology now, they get recycled for home battery installations. There's a few countries that will take that a few companies, sorry, that will take the battery, and you'll have it as a backup charger at home. They've found lots of ways of recycling them now, and it's a lot. The trouble is, and there's loads of conspiracy news behind the news, guys. There's so much stuff that you'll find on the internet that's absolute rubbish about the emissions. I mean that thing that Andy's just come up with. I'm going to dig into that because I don't actually believe that statement about the Nissan being 100. What did you say it was, Andy? Something like 90 odd.
109.
Yeah, I don't believe that, and this is somebody who
I've got it off a number of sites. That's just one of them. What they do say about those emissions is that 46% is in the manufacturing.
So have they taken that into account in the manufacturing of the diesel as well? Because what they're doing is they're giving you the stats on what the diesel puts out without taking into account the manufacturing. But with the electric car, they're taking into account the manufacturing as well.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know, and you don't know. We don't know that.
Well, I know, but common sense tells me that if you're taking into account the manufacturing when you're giving the figure on the Nissan, but you're only giving the stat that is the emissions from the diesel engine.
Who is?
So you said your emission was 115 on your car, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, but that doesn't take into account the manufacturing.
I don't know what it does. I don't know how they calculate it on both. I read
So,
somewhere.
so on yours, when you get the CO2s, it's literally what comes out the exhaust pipe. But what they've given you there for the Nissan includes the manufacturing, so it's not a like for like comparison.
No, Grant, we don't know that. That's what we don't know. I said.
Well, what I do know is the CO2s that for your car.
Yeah.
We do know this. This is a fact. When you quote 115 gram CO2s for your car, that's what comes out the exhaust pipe. That is not accounting for the manufacturing process.
I don't know what it counts.
Well, I'm telling you that doesn't account for the manufacturing process.
No.
Because it's the standard CO2 emissions that people use to tax cars, and it's what comes out the exhaust pipe. That's the way they do it. So when you get your company car tax, it's based on one of the parameters is CO2s, and it's the CO2s that comes out the exhaust. So that's what you get. So when you look at your CO2s, when you look at a car, that's what it's for. Now with an electric vehicle, it's zero because it hasn't got an exhaust pipe.
Manufacturing, that was another side mentioned about manufacturing, right? This site here, driving electric, just mentions emissions. CO2 emissions doesn't actually mention anything about manufacturing the vehicle. But look, listen,
there's no CO2 emissions for electric cars. There are none.
Yeah.
What about hydro cars?
The fact is, electric cars are coming. They're going to happen, right? I'm not against going electric. What I am against is a government that's saying that all diesel and petrol cars are bad. They're not. The old ones are, the new ones aren't. But let's move on to the heavy good vehicle and buses, which they haven't produced electric version of them in the UK yet or Europe, right? Because it's hard to get a 48-ton truck, right, with enough battery power to pull it. It is physically impossible. It's also Tesla saying he's doing it. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Let's wait and see.
No, he has. No, he's done that.
Andy, you're a mile off with this, mate. You're an absolute mile off with the technology.
We've not got one in production. He showed a test model that had a problem with it, right? On one of the tests, it did.
It sounds like you're scared of it. It's
like
like
scared of it. I'm just trying to point out to people that the technology, and I've been in engineering most of my life. I was an apprentice engineer at GKN, and I've been around manufacturing companies. I've worked with a guy who was into this. Craig Fletcher is a rocket scientist, right? He actually has done rocket science, and he does.
Yes, he has.
He does a lot on electric, and I've been around him, and it is there, and it's going to happen. And he's the one that said, actually, see this phone. Soon, he said, you're going to be in a situation whereby you walk in your house, you put that into a docking station, and your electricity will be coming from outer space. And I believe that. I look forward.
There is something that they're developing. You walk into the room and put the phone down, and there's a charging point on the ceiling that emits the electricity downwards.
Because they're actually talking about satellites can generate power out of space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that was invented in James Bond in 1970s. He was killing many people with it.
I'm not against it. What I'm trying to say to you is we've got a government and we've got a green agenda that's saying that electric is the best in the world, right? And diesel and petrol are bad. You're going to put 3 million people out of work in the UK.
It's not going to be one country that's going to do that. This whole electric takeover. It's just.
The UK is the only country that's implemented a vanity climate change bill by Theresa May, right, as a first, because that was the only thing she ever did while she was Prime Minister.
Let's not go to the climate change bit because that's a story for another day. Let's not do that one.
Subject is what I'm saying to you guys is this: there is only one thing that matters at the moment, is our economy, right, and the pandemic, right. They are unfortunately linked. They're linked together. Yeah. But what I'm actually saying is I was surprised at how low my emissions on the diesel car were. That's what I'm trying to make the point. So
we just want to talk about electric vehicles, though, don't we? That's what we want to
do. With the charging as well. So at the moment, I wouldn't buy, I wouldn't buy an electric vehicle as my only vehicle.
I don't think you should. No, that's right. You shouldn't do, and it's because we're not there yet.
Distance at the moment, and there was a guy.
I think a Model 3 would be fine for you, mate.
An i3,
Well, I think it
No,
would do.
no, a Model 3, a Tesla Model 3 would be fine for you.
I actually don't. I'm agreeing with Matt about the Tesla. The build quality still isn't there.
The Model 3, the build quality is excellent.
Yeah,
It's won car of the year. Most people acknowledge, car
I
people
do like the
acknowledge
look of the Model 3. If you looked at
that the Model 3
That's the
is
Model
the best.
3.
That's the best car in the world. That's what most people agree now. It's the best car in the world.
Chap around the corner from me, where I live, has got one, and it actually doesn't look that good unless it was.
That's a Model S, Andy. That's a Model S. That's not one of those.
That's a 3. That one is.
That one's a 3. But the one Andy's on about, the one his neighbour's got, is a Model S.
Is that a small one?
That's the small one. That is.
Yeah, that's the small one. It's 40,000, 45,000, is it? Brand new.
They start at 40k in the UK. You can get them for, I think they're $35,000 in
vehicles.
States.
That's right. Yes.
Grant's saying there's a lot less moving parts. You know, the cost is enormous because obviously they haven't got the this economies of scale yet under production, have they?
Skoda have just brought one out that's 16 grand, a little mini electric car, and I think the range on it is 150 miles, something like that.
Wow.
So we're literally that far away from the flip happening on price, with and you know, the range issue is going to become less and less of a thing. They're scaling up the production of installing charging units, and it's not the government that do it. It's a conglomerate of Mercedes, Porsche, BMW. They're all got together to put together a charging infrastructure throughout Europe, because it's only going one way. You know.
Grant, there's a question for you there. Sorry, finish what you were saying. There's a question for you as well.
Yeah, so the charging infrastructure at the moment, if you're doing a lot of miles, it's not ideal. Because if you haven't got a Tesla is by far the best. The infrastructure for Tesla is really good. And as long as you plan ahead and you know that you've got to charge if you're going, you know, a substantially long distance, their infrastructure is fantastic. And it might not be one on the motorway, but what you can do, Andy, with a Tesla, you know, is that as long as you plan ahead and you know you've got to charge, it works it all out for you. You don't really have to worry about it. If you run out of charge, it's just because you haven't planned ahead.
That's one thing I just want to pick up on. The brand new. Obviously, I'm one of the sad people who watched the Apple Tech talk last week, and their new maps for the new iPhones. Well, it's going to be on the new phone as well. Their new map service is electric based. So if you're driving an electric car, you tell it what car it is. It can connect to the car by Bluetooth to find out what your range is, and then will take you wherever you have to go to make sure you don't run out. Now, I know Andy's saying there's issues with people.
Most electric cars do that anyway, Matt. What you just said, they all come with that.
I understand that, but it's also in conjunction with taking you around toll roads and charges like congestion charges and that type of thing. This is all built into Apple. So there are companies, I know it's just Apple, but there are companies that are understanding that this is the future. And I don't want to put out Andy as a dinosaur because he likes the diesel and the petrol cars, but I like them as well. But I just think you've got to be a slightly broader mind. Now, if you drove up in that is the brand new Ford Mustang.
Yeah.
That is an outstanding car, and that's not been that they're not making this SUV in a petrol or diesel. Ford have decided they're just making that, and it goes on sale next month in this country and in America, and it's just electric.
Yeah.
That's all it is. They're not going to make a diesel or a petrol version of it. So even Ford, who the king of car manufacturers as such, they know where it's going. But it's a beautiful looking car. It's a great car. It may not suit everybody's needs, but it's a great car. So how much does it cost then, Grant, to charge electric car? How much do you know roughly?
So the way I do it is I plug in the car when we've finished using it at the end of the night, and it's got a timer so that we get cheap rate electricity from 1 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning, I think it is. So the car charges automatically overnight during that period. It costs about £1 usually, but the thing is, you don't always use all the range. So quite often it's a few pence. You know, the car's sat on the drive most of the time at the moment. Let's face it, it's not costing me anything.
Oh, no,
but Abby drives to town and back, so she probably does about 40 miles round trip when she goes to work, and so she'll plug it in at night, and it will charge up overnight. You never end up putting the full whack of charge in it because very rarely it runs out. If you go to a charging place on the motorway, so Ecotricity is the main one in the UK. There's loads of Ecotricity. There's usually when you go to a petrol station, they've got a few chargers. I use it for my car as well. It costs a few pence. It usually costs, if I'm filling up Abby's, it might cost about £2.50, something like that. And that'll put sort of 40 miles in it, something like that, 40 miles range, which is usually all you need if you're using it on a motorway. But the amount of times that I've charged Abby's car outside the house, I could count literally on one hand. You just don't need to, because whenever it leaves the house, it's got a full charge. And if I'm going to do longer than 100 miles, and I've gone to Cardiff and back in it. I met a guy actually when I was in Cardiff who'd come all the way over from Ireland in exactly the same car as mine with his, let's face it, if you drive like you're driving Miss Daisy, you can probably squeeze 80 to 90 miles range out of that old technology. Now you could, if you did the same with, they've done loads of tests with the Model 3s with things like the new version of my car will do 240 miles if you drive it sensibly on one charge. When you put that into your real world, life, how often do you actually make journeys that long? And if you do need a longer journey, you just make sure you're planning your charging stop, you plan ahead. It's really not a big deal. And that is the thing that most people get put off about. Now, as we roll it out, supply and demand will prevail. We know we're going to need more chargers as more electric cars come on the road, but we don't need as many as you think, because the 99% of the time you drive an electric car, you're driving it on juice that you've charged up from your own house. So this whole thing about needing this massive charging infrastructure is actually it's ridiculous, really, because you only, anybody that does many more miles are going to use either a hybrid or a petrol for the time being, and that's what they're going to do. But most people don't need that. Most people don't need it. And so the charging infrastructure is nowhere near the bigger deal that people think it is.
Well, actually, man, when they talk about charging infrastructure, they're including what people need at home. And the estimate is that there's going to be 25 million eventually home-based charging.
So, Elon Musk has thought this, we talk about him a lot, but he is the legend when it comes to this. He's got the whole thing sorted, from producing the electricity from solar panels that are on your roof through to keeping the energy in a battery that's in your house. And then your car on your drive actually becomes an energy source too. And the new Model 3s that now come out, you sit them on the drive with a battery, you plug them into your house, and during the day, your house will use your car as the electricity that it needs. And then it can actually use the roof of your house when you use the solar panels to charge, and then the excess energy that's needed can be taken from things like solar fields and wind power, wind turbine power, and obviously we've got other things like wave power. We have all the technology that we need in the world to have a sustainable and eco-friendly system. That not only that, but that's not the point. It's actually massively more efficient and better. And although we're not there yet, the direction that we're going in is by far the better one, just from a convenience point of view. We can literally operate off the grid, self-contained, or at least the majority of the fuel that we have. And I think if anybody's interested in any of this, and the whole thing fascinates me, I love it. I feel very well informed, mainly because Robert Llewellyn, he runs a YouTube channel called Fully Charged. He broadcasts regularly, and he will give you all the information you need about electricity, about all the different technologies that are coming through. It's fascinating stuff. And the debate that I wanted to have today is not necessarily about how it affects the economy. That's a different debate. about whether we should be investing in our industry. All of that's a separate debate. The thing that I wanted to get across today is we're going in one direction. That direction is electric. It is better by far, and there is so much misinformation out there that is provided by what is backed by oil companies, because the whole world runs on oil. The whole economy of the world runs on oil, and the direction that we're going in completely destroys that economy. And that is why we have to make the transition slowly. It's not because the technology isn't there, because it is. And it's not because it's not a better way of doing things. It's economics. That's the thing that's slowing us to get in there.
No, that's very true. So that's nearly it today, gentlemen. That's a good debate. We like that one. Darren said he wish he hadn't watched because he's now looking at Teslas and their expensive show for me. He said
they are awesome.
They are awesome. A fantastic car, and that's the truck. If anybody, that's the
and that goes into production this year, by the way.
Yeah, end of this year, isn't it?
That's
and
right. Andy, that you will be seeing those, Andy.
I'm going to put my neck on the line. You gotta be kidding me. It's never going to be out this year.
The joke is, though, obviously, it can't carry anything because all the batches are in the back. It isn't. And
that machine is phenomenal. That semi, that Tesla semi is absolutely phenomenal machine. And when they've got the whole system where they go in convoy, which means that you can the reason they've had so many orders for them is because the amount of money that delivery companies are going to be saving using those things is ridiculous on fuel. They're so much more powerful. They've got decent range, and they're much faster.
And that's the solar roof as well.
Tesla, Elon Musk has been known for some of his massive failures, right?
He's sort of on the case on this, Andy. You can't knock him on here now.
I think
that truck will be available across the market this year in a month of Sundays. You've got to be kidding me. With a global pandemic, what's happening in America? You've got to be kidding.
Doesn't stop him sending rockets up during the pandemic either, does it? Nothing stopped him. Anyway, that is it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was brilliant. It's just like the Drummer Monkey on a Monday night. That was great. Just a little bit of information, not for anybody else in the rest of the planet who watches this, but the Drummer Monkey are delaying their opening till the 17th of July.
Oh, really? Crikey.
Why, you ask? Because they've just decided to refurb the toilets. Just now. Not 3 months ago. Just now. Insane. Anyway, that's it. We will be back. I might not be able to go back in there. I will see you all tomorrow at midday. Hope you enjoy yourself. Grant and Andy, thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.